So this build has been a long time coming, but it's finally here, the Stormcaller. I put out a poll a few weeks ago asking if I should make this a modded build, to get all the features required to make this build function like the backstory short I released quite a while ago, linked above. Or if I should just rework the build to be a full blaster caster, and it was a pretty resounding win for the rework. So let's get into the disclaimers. Like always, this is a concept first, optimized second style build. I will be focusing on the character's story and not the best possible damage. With that said though, it's pretty hard to go wrong with this build, and you are going to deal some pretty crazy damage regardless. However, if you are just looking for optimization tips, I will add a few at the end of the video. So yeah, if that's all you're after, check the timestamps. Just on the backstory, I wanted to go into it a little since the earlier shorts I did pre-launch were a little bit light in that regard. So you grew up in a village on the southern tip of Alaron, part of the Moonshade Isles, directly west of Baldur's Gate across the Sea of Swords. The village there were a barbaric lot, worshippers of the gods of fury, greatest among them Talos, the Storm Lord. The night of your birth was a tempest none would soon forget. On her bed your mother wailed in agony as the thunder clapped and rain pelted on the roof above. They say you are safe inside your homes when the fury of the storm rears its head. If only you were so lucky. A single bolt forked and struck straight through the ceiling, right there upon your very bed. Your mother passed instantly. When they opened her womb, a soft bluish glow filled the room as you began to cry. You did not have an easy childhood. Your father was distant when he was even home, which he rarely was. Half the village saw your birth as a blessing from their fickle gods. The other half saw you as a blight, a curse. From your first birthday, your affinity for the element of lightning was unmatched. You would often crawl out into the storms and smile up at the sky. The devout among your village sought to teach you all they knew of their religion and how to tap into the powers of the storms. You never felt any great love for Talos, but you would not say no to a means of gaining power. At age 16, the village became too much for you. You hitched a ride on a merchant vessel to Baldur's Gate, your new home for many years. You worked tirelessly as a mercenary, always saving until you could afford your own ship and crew. Life was hard, but good. Until that fateful day where your past returned to haunt you. Talos, petty as always, hated his gifts being spurned. He summoned an enormous elemental from the elemental plane of air and bent them to his bidding. Assaulted in the sea by choking gale force winds, lightning and hailstorms. Your only recourse was a desperate bid for survival. You used all you knew of the storm's fury and wrenched Talos' very own power from him, using it to bind the elemental to your very body, ensnaring it inside. The aftermath was devastating. Your crew dead, your ship wrecked, and as you washed onto the sands outside Baldur's Gate, you collapse, your last sight, giant tentacles in the sky. Okay, so character creation, and for this build we are playing a half-elf, and in particular a high half-elf. After years at sea with only your crewmates as company, you have learned how to befriend those around you. So this is the cantrip we'll be taking as our choice here. This racial cantrip scales with intelligence, so make sure that if you don't take this, that you take something that doesn't require an attack roll or ability check. For our class, we are starting as Sorcerer, for the Constitution saving throw proficiency, and of course because we were blessed from birth by lightning. As such, for our cantrips we will be taking Shocking Grasp. However, we don't really want to be too close to the melee due to our low AC or armor class. So we only want to use this on enemies when they're on top of us to get rid of their reaction and therefore move away from them. We are also picking up Ray of Frost here. I don't mind this as it still feels like cold damage could be part of the storms that you produce. For level 1 spells, Thunder Wave is a definite, however the other spell for me is a tough one. Many people will tell you to take Chromatic Orb and be done with it, however I really like Witch Bolt. Eventually it outscales Chromatic Orb, even the Thunder version, and has great potential with this build due to its ability to be twinned, reactivated, and its interactions with certain gear pieces we'll discuss later. If you want to, feel free to take Chromatic Orb now and then swap them out later around level 7. For our subclass, surprising no one, we are taking Storm Sorcery, giving us Tempestuous Magic, letting us use our bonus action to fly anytime we cast a leveled spell. This is a great tool for getting into position to unleash a massive spell or to get out of a bad spot after you have done so. Next, and due to the absence of Sailor from the background, we are once again going with old trusty Outlander, gaining proficiency in Athletics and Survival. You may have noticed that even as a sorcerer, after a life on the seas, you have built a lot of muscle and are adept with a variety of weapons and armor. So, while for mechanical reasons our abilities don't necessarily reflect this, our proficiencies will help to show this side of the character. For ability scores, we are taking 8 Strength, 14 Dexterity, 15 plus 1 in Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 15 plus 2 in Charisma. Again, for proficiencies and taking your pick of dialogue option between Persuasion, Deception, and Intimidation. Finally, I like Religion as a way of representing your past teachings and time dealing with gods and their powers. Okay, so shock your way off the ship and on to level 2. So while you don't worship the gods of chaos, you were taught to tap into their powers, particularly those of the Tempest domain, Talos, Auril, and Umberlee. As we take a level now in Cleric. For cantrips, Guidance is always a solid pickup, otherwise pick your favorites. For your subclass, you are of the Tempest domain, getting the ever useful Fog Cloud and Thunderwave. Of course, we already have Thunderwave. The reason for the double up is simply based on the spell DC. Since we don't have a good Wisdom score, and this spell targets Constitution of all things, we need a decent saving throw modifier for it to hit. Hence why we chose it as a sorcerer and not as a cleric. Finally, as a Tempest domain cleric, we get the Wrath of the Storm, letting us use our reaction to deal 2d8 thunder or lightning damage to any creature that hits us with a weapon attack. This won't do a crazy amount of damage since it is a dex save to our Wisdom DC, however it is a good use of our reaction since we have no other use for it currently. For our deity, we are choosing Talos, of course, and for spells, we aren't bestowing any blessings here. We are leeching the powers of these gods without permission. So Bless would be a good choice, but more thematically, we are taking Create or Destroy Water, a great addition to a lightning-based build. So elementals are generally non-hostile in nature, drifting as a disembodied consciousness. They do not wish to do harm, however, they will not forgive betrayal of any kind. And as the elemental's consciousness begins to emerge within you, you feel its fury bubbling to the surface. Not at you, at Talos. You feel it is almost gracious to you for freeing it from its forced servitude. You agree to find a way to free the tempestuous entity from your body, and thankful for your agreeableness, you decide together that for the time being it will grant you its powers over the storms. Level 3 and we gain another level in Cleric, and calling on the elemental's power we can channel their destructive wrath. This ability can only be used once per short rest to maximize the damage of a single lightning or thunder spell that we cast. This alone is the main source of the insane burst of this build. Being able to upcast a spell and cause it to deal its maximum damage without a roll cannot be understated in its potency. So level 4 and you are going back to Sorcerer here. Returning the attention to yourself, you realize how much stronger you must become in order to overcome the challenges you are faced with. You have been different from birth, and maybe this has made you grow complacent in your abilities. The threads unraveling around you are throwing the world into chaos, and you need to seek out power to make it through the coming storm. So we begin to experiment with different ways of using our spells and eventually learn to redirect or even split a spell in two. Meta magic time, and we are taking Twin Spell like every other sorcerer build ever, letting us hit 2 targets with all our single target spells. Along with that, we are taking Careful Spell. Now, as a caster, sometimes your party members are just in the way when you are trying to hit with a big spell, and this helps you save them from that damage that they would otherwise take from your lightning bolts. For our spell here, I really like Featherfall. This allows you to control the winds and it feels pretty on point. Level 5 and the experimentation continues. We get our first level 2 spell, and we need to start being careful here. We get a bunch of spells on Storm Sorcerer 6 for free, including Gust of Wind, Thunder Wave, and Create Water. So on this level, let's grab Shatter, a great AoE spell with a pretty wide range, and let's leave Gust of Wind to pick it up in a few levels. For our meta magic on this level, you guessed it, we are taking Quicken Spell, letting us cast any spell as a bonus action. This includes reactivations of spells such as Witch Bolt if you're so inclined. On this level, however, we are likely to use this for a turn 1 burst combo of Quicken Create Water to apply the wet status to enemies, causing them to become vulnerable to lightning damage, then twinning an upcasted Witch Bolt for double damage, then using Destructive Wrath to maximize that damage, dealing 72 damage to both targets. On to level 6 and we get another cantrip. Pick your favorite here, there aren't any great options. Then we get another level 2 spell, and personally I don't think there are any clear choices here either. Misty Step likely isn't worth it, since tempestuous magic is very similar. In fact, it's likely cheaper to cast in most cases. I would consider taking Blur here though, as thematically I think it fits, and we do have a very low AC. Although it does require concentration, so it doesn't play nice with Witch Bolt. It probably is the better choice though. We also get a feat, and there are only 2 feat levels for this build, so we have to choose wisely. On this level, we are going with Elemental Adept Lightning, causing your spells to ignore resistances to lightning damage and making it impossible to roll a 1 for damage when using lightning spells. There are a few enemies with lightning resistance early on, and more so moving into the later game. You should already have 18 Charisma here if you chose the +1 upgrade from a certain Act 1 boss, which you definitely would choose as gaining power is your current goal. Okay, halftime, and there are 2 short things to mention before we get into the gear. Firstly is the wet status, specifically throwing water containers. So casting Create Water all the time will use your precious spell slots, and while it does hit a much larger area, it's best reserved for that exact purpose. If you are just hitting a single enemy, it might pay to use a thrown water item instead to save your spell slots. Better yet, get another party member to throw it if they're not doing anything else on their turn, as this means you don't need to spend your action to cause the wet status, allowing you to cast a devastating spell on your turn. Actually, let's get into the gear and we can discuss the other point after. So Act 1, and we are going for the usual lightning based setup. It's thematic and perfectly suited for this build, granting us +1 to our attack rolls, and the lightning damage from the lightning charges will be boosted due to the wet status. Your first pickups here are likely the Sparkle Hands, using the second effect for advantage on enemies in metal armor. Yes, this does work for ranged spell attack rolls. The Jolty Vest is next, boosting our defenses, or the Protecty Spark Wall, improving our chances to hit. The Spell Sparkler is the generator of lightning charges and a great early staff which you'll likely hold on to for a while. Following that, the Boots of Striding for the protection while concentrating. Lifebringer is a great source of temporary hit points, not negating enemy attacks, but for the negation of small unavoidable damage over time effects. The Sparks Wall gives us resistance to lightning damage, which we will get with Elemental Adept, but likely not for some time after you find this ring. It also saves us from electrocuting ourselves. The Amulet of Elemental Augmentation is a great pickup for boosting the damage of Ray of Frost and Shocking Grasp. Finally, you will also likely get the Water Sparkers pretty early on, but I don't like messing with those till after I have the Sparks Wall, since as mentioned I don't like electrocuting myself. On to Act 2, and we actually get a candidate for our endgame robe here in Potent Robe, further increasing our damage from our cantrips and giving us a guaranteed 4 temporary hit points every turn. From there we start to transition from lightning gear into a reverberation setup, equipping the gloves of Belligerent Skies and boots of Stormy Clamor from Act 1, applying 4 stacks of reverberation per cast. Thunderskin Cloak and Ring of Spiteful Thunder give us a high likelihood of dazing our enemies, negating their armor class and preventing their attacks of opportunity. Finally, Hat of Storm Scion's Power gives us a +1 to our attack rolls and spell DC per stack of Arcane Acuity. This has the potential to greatly increase our hit chance, given we have multiple thunder spells. However, at least at the time of recording this, the thunder damage from reverberation does not trigger it. Fingers crossed that changes. Act 3, and the gear sets disappear, replaced by items of pure potency, as opposed to synchronized effects. Birthright should at this point in the game boost our charisma up to 22. Cloak of the Weave boosting our damage and offering protection from elemental damage. Cloak of Displacements as another option due to our low AC. Amulet of the Devout is a must-have, granting us another use of Destructive Wrath and a higher chance to land our spells. Finally, and I'm sure many of you predicted this, Marco Heshkia is a perfect staff for this build. Higher hit chance, a free spell once per day, and the ever-potent Kareska's Favor, granting us access to Destructive Wave or Chain Lightning, spells that this build would never get access to otherwise. Now just quickly, I wanted to go over a few weird interactions in game so that you are aware of them. Firstly is that the spellcasting modifier added by Amulet of Elemental Augmentation is not based on your highest stat, but on the last class you added to your multi-class list. This for us is Cleric, so we only get a +1 while we are using this. You could respec and start as Cleric, then take Sorcerer levels, however, then you lose your Constitution saving throw proficiency. So I'll leave that up to your discretion. I only mention this because the reactivation effects of Call Lightning and Witch Bolt are currently treated as cantrips, so they benefit from Potent Robe and the Amulet of Elemental Augmentation. This could add up to 10 damage to those casts, and so it may be worth it. Okay, halftime break over and back to the build. Your connection to your elemental counterpart grows and it teaches you new ways to manipulate your powers. Many things for this primal being are instinctual in nature, though thunder and lightning, these things come as naturally to you as they do to it. And as you delve deeper into yourself, you discover a connection you have not made before, and using that primal energy, you learn to not just manipulate the storm, but to become a tempest in unto itself. Level 7 and we are a Sorcerer 5, getting us the quintessential Lightning Bolt. This spell will be our go-to for Destructive Wrath. It deals 54 damage upcast using our level 4 spell slot in a straight 30-meter line. This line is surprisingly wide and it is also based on a dexterity saving throw, so it can be cast with careful spell, allowing our allies to avoid the damage. Straight onto level 8 as our Tempest is fully unleashed. Level 6 in Sorcerer and we get the Heart of the Storm feature, making us resistant to thunder damage and also causing leveled spells we cast to cause a small, localized storm dealing damage to all enemies within 6 meters of us. We get another level 3 spell and we are definitely taking haste here, granting you more actions in your turn as long as you maintain concentration. It can also be twinned, giving that benefit to 2 party members. That's not all though, as we unlock several spells on this level as a Storm Sorcerer, including Call Lightning, Sleet Storm, Gust of Wind, Create Water, and Thunder Wave. This is an incredibly fitting list of spells and pretty great ones as well. You do already have 2 of them though. As a final cherry on top for this duo level, I think you have learned the ability to briefly blink in and out of the elemental plane of air, giving you a safe haven from attacks and giving you a brief moment to gather your thoughts. It's hard to control though and doesn't always work the way you want it to. So I would definitely recommend replacing your Thunder Wave here and taking the Blink spell, letting you disappear from this plane of existence at the end of your turn and reappear at the start of your next turn. As your control over your magic continues to grow, it begins to shift. Metamagic was the first step, and maybe it is due to your desperate situation, or maybe it is simply your ego's secret desire for power that is causing you to take on a more learned approach to your magics. Learning simple tricks from other schools and learning how to scribe spells for later use. It is through this learning that you discover a tome focusing on the elementals from other planes, and even the secrets to binding them to your service. Before it was instinctual for you, but now, if you can reverse engineer this spell scroll, you can likely free yourself. Okay, level 9, and we are taking an unexpected turn here, taking a level in Wizard. Now cantrips are not important. For the spells, I suggest the ritual spells, then maybe shield and mage armor if you want to grab them. What we are really here for though is the ability to scribe spells into your spellbook. You are able to scribe spells up to the level of spell slot that you've unlocked regardless of how many wizard levels you have. Fortunately for us, we have just unlocked level 5 spell slots on this level, which is the same level required to cast a Conjure Elemental spell, and so if you have seen or do see any scrolls of Conjure Elemental going forward, that's definitely going in your spellbook. And with a powerful tempest that engulfs the surroundings, you release the elemental from the confines of your body, separate once more. This elemental will now join you in combat concentration free. It has access to a ranged and melee multi-attack, the latter dealing double damage to shocked targets. It has the ability to fly and teleport, resistance to all physical damage, poison, and of course thunder and lightning. As a note, I found the spell scroll in Sorcerer's Sundries if you can't find one. Level 10, and we are going back to Sorcerer here, unlocking level 4 spells and taking Ice Storm, learning how to unleash a hailstorm upon our enemies, dealing ice and bludgeoning damage. This is the largest AoE you will get access to with this build. Level 11, and we get our second feat, maxing out our charisma at 20. For our spell on this level, pick your favorite. There are a bunch of great options to choose from at this point. Lastly on this level, but definitely not least, you gain your level 6 spell slot, giving you access to one massive burst of damage with your Destructive Wrath, or giving you access to the upcasted Air Myrmidon with an AoE damaging silence, a potent stunning weapon attack, and invisibility. Level 12, and finishing off the build with a second level in Wizard to get our subclass, and I think Abjuration is a great way to close out the build, flavoring your Arcane Ward as protective wind magic surrounding you and rebuffing attackers. This requires Abjuration spells to activate those, so maybe swap in a few spells like Sanctuary, Shield of Faith, or the Shield spell to refuel your ward. Okay, let's talk optimization briefly. Firstly, let's just point out armor. You have access to heavy armor, you can definitely take advantage of that. You likely won't find as many potent spellcasting pieces, but you will survive a lot of more encounters that would otherwise kill you. Secondly, I would definitely consider Fighter over Wizard, getting access to Action Surge, which when paired with Haste and Quicken Spell means up to 4 spells in a single turn. You could take that one step further, getting 3 levels of Rogue, gaining a second bonus action for an additional Quicken Spell. However, that would mean only ever reaching 4th level spell slots and 3rd level spells. Other things to consider are higher levels in Sorcerer, disregarding a 3rd class entirely, opting for 10 levels in Sorcerer gaining 5th level spells. Cone of Cold, Greater Invisibility, or Telekinesis could be great pickups. Finally, Illithid powers, and making your way to Luck of the Far Realms is an easy choice here. You have 1 charge of Destructive Wrath and 1 charge of a guaranteed critical hit, a match made in heaven. For reference, a 6th level Witch Bolt on a wet target with both of these effects activated deals upwards of 280 damage. This spell can be twinned, potentially dealing 560 damage in one action. Pretty wild, right? But with that said, that's another build done. Thanks so much for watching, it's been a long time coming and I hope you enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for my next build, and until then, see ya!